Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm sharing another Project Life card process video with you. This one has been kind of a pain to edit. Somewhere in the middle of my footage it just froze, and so it didn't show you part of my process, so I went back and sort of redid a few things and clipped those videos in just to make it a little more cohesive. But you'll notice there are a few spots that are just missing, so thanks for your patience. Hopefully it's not too distracting to the process, and hopefully the video is still inspiring you to use your stash to make your own Project Life cards. If you've been watching these videos for a while, I basically am just trying to use up my stash, be creative, and use all the products that I also just purchase on a whim rather than hoarding things. The whole goal of this sort of set of videos is just to use it all up, to enjoy it, have fun, be creative, and so hopefully that inspires you. You can see in this one, I'm starting out with a lot of typing on my typewriter, and now I am cutting those out, so I tried to speed it up quite a bit so it wouldn't be too tedious to watch. But for this one, I thought it would be fun to type out a bunch of quotes that I find inspiring, that I might want to use throughout the year, and then make some cards based around those quotes. So I'm thinking of using some Maggie Holmes Flourish pieces of floral stuff, but I'm going to gesso a few cards first. And someone had asked in my last video if I'm using watercolor paper, and I am not, because I'm wanting to use up all this white cardstock. But if you do use watercolor paper, you'll have a flatter piece of paper when you're all done and it's all dried. But I still think that the gesso gives me a good base on my normal paper, so that's totally up to you what you want to do. But again, I'm just using up my stash. So this first quote is really, really long, so I'm just starting by cutting it up and seeing if it will fit on this card. I used some floral washi at the top, which is from Paper Source, and this skinny colored washi is from an old MT multi-pack, I think, and then the camera is from Maggie Holmes Flourish. I'm just cutting down all of my words to be a little bit smaller, and you can see the tail end of it being stuck kind of stayed in my video. I apologize for that. So I just basically glue them all down until they fit. And now this is the one that I've recreated because it completely got cut out of my video. So I have this really large wooden block stamp that I got at Paper Source. It's sort of a starry sky. So I'm using these 3 Memento inks to sort of dab on my stamp to make this beautiful constellation-y night sky backdrop for my card. So I'm starting with the lightest color, which is the purple. It's called Grape Jelly, and then I used Paris Dusk, and now I'm going to use Tuxedo Black. So lightest to dark, so that way there's less chance of messing up your ink pad. I'm not too worried about it, but if you are, be careful. So I'm just kind of dabbing them to mix them a little bit on the stamp, and you can kind of see those different colors there. So when you're stamping a big stamp like this, I like to stamp it down and then flip it over and rub it with my hand, and I find that that makes a better impression than trying to stamp it normally. So that's my tip for you if you do that. So you can see it turned out pretty cool. It's a little bit different than the one that I actually will show in the final pictures, but I use the same method. So hopefully that will show you guys how to do that. Now I just let it dry a little bit. I still wasn't patient enough, so I would say if you want to do this technique, give it a good while to dry. But I'm using these pretty star and constellation rub-ons from One Canoe Two's Creekside collection. I'm not sure if they're available anymore. If they are, I will link them below. But I love them. I ended up buying a second package because I like them so much. But you can see the rub-ons aren't quite as clean, and I think it's because my ink is just a little bit wet. So again, if you have more patience than me, it won't be quite so streaky around the edges, but I think it still looks cool and I'm not too worried about it, so do what you need to do. Next I'm going to use some little star stickers, also from One Canoe Two's Creekside, from the sticker sheet, just to add a little texture. And then I'm going to use these Maggie Holmes carousel sequins just to embellish. And so I think the tail end of the first one is getting clipped in right now. Like I said, this video was just kind of a pain, so I went ahead and put in this quote, "Don't be delicate, be vast and brilliant," because I thought that made perfect sense for the night sky. And I'm putting on these Maggie Holmes carousel sequin pieces and the stars from One Canoe too. And I really like how that looks. I think it's pretty. I think you could use it any time of year. It's not too springy or anything like that. You can see at the top there, I did end up watercoloring. That's what got cut out of my video, was I watercolored a card really light pink, and then I used a piece of Maggie Holmes ephemera, strawberry plant on the side, and put the quote next to it. Now I'm using an old block stamp with my Versamark glue ink, and I'm going to, and it's a compass, so I'm going to put my compass rose just kind of in different spots throughout this card, and you can't really see it very well while I'm stamping it, but my idea is to emboss these little impressions and to do some watercoloring, kind of like I did in my last video. So again, if you want to see any of those other videos, I will link that playlist below. So now I'm going to use my white embossing powder from Paper Source and just kind of pour it on top, and then make sure it gets completely stuck to the little shapes, the little compass roses. And now I'm using a dry paintbrush just to kind of help some of the excess powder off. It just, it just kind of sticks sometimes, or you might get a clump somewhere, and that just helps it to come off a little bit cleaner. I just blew the powder all over my desk. It's such a pain, so be really careful when you're embossing not to get the powder everywhere, because it is not fun to clean up. That was definitely kind of a newbie mistake. I haven't done a lot of embossing, but yeah, would not recommend blowing it all over the place. So now you can see the powder is stuck, and I'm getting out my embossing heat tool from Paper Source, and you can kind of see as it crystallizes there that it goes from powdery to shiny, and I just love how that looks. It looks really nice, and it gets pretty hot, so I'm setting it down now to finish it up. But I think that this looks really neat. I mean, it would even look neat if you just left it all white, but see how nice and shiny that is? I'm excited about it. I think it looks really good. So now I'm just going to get rid of my scratch papers, try to clean up some of this embossing powder, but I tell you what, it doesn't actually clean up well. Just, yeah, again, don't do that. It's not smart. Yeah, I don't know. It's worse than glitter. People that really hate glitter, it's worse. So yeah, that's my PSA on embossing powder. So now I'm getting out my Jane Davenport watercolors, which I got at Michael's. And I have both sets, but I'm going to be using the bright one. And I just have this water bottle, honestly, of basically gray water from, if we just like don't finish a water at some point in time, I just put it all in this water bottle and use it for plants, which are all dead. All my plants are dead. I need new plants and better plant caring skills. But anyway, that's what I'm using. Sorry if that grosses you out, but it just doesn't bother me. So I'm just using that to mix in some of these blues and greens to do some nice watercolor in the background. And I love how the embossed parts stick out really nicely. So now I've let it dry, and I'm going to let it dry a little bit longer, but you can see it turned out really cool with the watercolor. And now I'm using this scale stencil from Michael's on my next card, and I believe that I gessoed the card first, but I may not have. And I'm just using basically the excess blue and green water plus a little more paint to color in that background of this card, and then I'm just going to let it dry after I get all the color I want into it. So I love how the one with the compass rose turned out. I'm super excited about it. I'm going to be good and let them dry even more. And I'm working on, I think, what is my last card for this video. I have this stencil. This is also from Jane Davenport, and I apologize. My head is just going to be in front of this thing as I'm doing it the whole time. So I'm using her mermaid markers, which are super fun. They're basically filled with like an ink. Yeah, it's more of an ink than a watercolor. But the yellow is called Pirate's Gold, and the reddish color is called Coral. And then I'm using the watercolor from my last video that, again, just dried in that cup, so I'm working on it just to kind of fill out that flower there. So I just used the stencil for the dots and the outline of the flower, and then just use the watercolor on the petals. And now I'm just cutting down my next quote. It's kind of fun because if you pick out quotes that you know you like, they really can go anywhere within your year. It doesn't matter what's going on, really. I feel like if you like the quote, it's probably going to be applicable at some point in time. So I'm excited to use these for some 2018 documenting. I'm just trying to decide exactly where I want them. And I'm going to use my Zig glue pen to glue them down. And I am not, I'm sure you've noticed, super meticulous about cutting super straight or evenly or gluing things really straight. I like things off center and a little bit messy because it just works for me. But if you don't, this may not be the kind of project for you. Or it might be great. Might be a good learning experience to just let yourself be creative and not worry so much about perfection. So I just sketched a little border there, and then I underlined each of the lines just to make them a little more obvious and stand out better. And now I'm cutting up my quote for this one with the compass roses, and I'm using my adhesive to stick those down because they're thicker. And it says, "This is the time for small paychecks and big memories." I always love that quote, so I thought it would be really fun for the one with the compass roses. And I'm looking through my crepe paper here and there, stickers, etc., to find something travel themed. And I love this glittery copper plain. I think it works perfectly there. And then I also have a copper sticker with a little geotag. So I love how those turned out. I'm realizing I did not finish my last card, so I will take this stencil off. And you can see that it either wasn't dry or I didn't gesso it or something happened and it ripped as I took it off because it's an adhesive stencil. But I actually really like how it turned out. So it's, it's up to you whether you decide something is ruined or something is just different looking than you expected. I really like how the tears look. It just gives it a lot of texture. So I didn't have one more quote, so I went ahead and typed that up. And I'm just cutting them down pretty thin to place on this card. And I don't really do anything extra to it later, but it is not dry yet, so I don't actually stick it down. But that quote is, "The cure for anything is salt water, sweat, tears, or the sea," which is Isak Dinesen. So yeah, now you can see the final cards. I really love how all of these turn out. It was fun to play with the watercolor, to play with some stamping, and not really worry about how things mess up. Like I said, this one's not dry yet, but I think even the tears look really cool. So I hope that this video was inspiring or interesting to you. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what kind of videos you'd like to see in the future. If you want to see more Project Life card videos, just let me know. Having a lot of fun, as usual, making them for you, and I always appreciate hearing your sweet comments. So let me know what you think of these. Yeah, just having a really good time with them. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.